All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samu?
Well, it is our social episode, and we are going to talk about some fitness stuff because you had a person in your life texting you about stuff, and you wanted the professor on that, which is going to be fun. Do you have
Yeah,
the
and I thought
screenshots
it
for
was a
that
good follow-up
to
to
last
what we
time?
talked about last time.
Uh,
Um,
then on the other side of that, well, you want to talk about mental health or mental state and training. I know you wanted to do that. Uh, but also, I think I want to set something forward that might be a long-term ongoing conversation because we're in an election year. And the one thing the conservatives keep losing people on is the abortion debate. And y'all conservatives, if you just need to listen to me because I keep trying to help you. And it's about framing of the argument. And I think that's what I want to set the stage for. So kind of set the stage for that. And then after that, you can formulate further arguments down the road. All right.
well, I also forgot that we had teased something that I'm sorry I remembered because apparently you didn't. We were going to talk about bears,
Oh yeah, Bears. Well, that'll
and
go.
I'm out of
That'll actually be
alcohol,
the
so
middle. That'll
ugh.
be the middle between the fitness, then the Bears, and then the abortion thing. Because
Yep,
I just want to bring up some numbers and I want to kind of reframe the discussion a little bit, I think.
yeah. Well, then this is appropriate because this
Well, it's
giant
also it's
moron
also
is in my way.
it's also evil because and you didn't know it. It's accidentally evil because I very nearly had a kitty cat today. Uh, a client of mine, her sister found one on the side of the road, pathetic, starving, just like I found Hamilton, and apparently it had a fractured pelvis. But
Oof.
cats can come back from that, and she couldn't take care of it. And I told her, you know what? Let's give it the old college try. And I was supposed to go pick the kitty up this afternoon, but apparently it passed away overnight. So Jefferson is no longer. I had already named him because we have Frederick, we have Hamilton, and Ace is actually short for Alexander. So we would have had Hamilton and Jefferson together. That would have been I had already named it, but
Appropriate.
yeah, no kitty. And I'm actually very sad, even though I've never met the kitty. I've just seen a picture. So, for those in the audience, this might help. You said bringing the cat into the photo helps with views. I'm just an animal lover, period.
Hmm.
It could be
Hmm.
a fish, it could be a cat, it could be a dog. Everybody's like, "Are you a dog or cat person?" I'm like, "Why do I have to choose?" Maybe if I had a slight preference, dog, because cats can be. I don't like litter boxes. That's what I don't like. But if you put it in the right place, it's okay.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, just animal. Give me animal. Give me a monkey. Give me a donkey. I don't care. I'll take care of it. Especially if it's pathetic when I meet it. If it's pathetic when
Yep.
I meet it, it's
Yep.
definitely on my list. Uh, so no, yeah, let's start. Whoa, give me a bear, right? No, we'll save that one for a
Oh, you
future.
want to save that one? Okay. So,
Yeah. So
are we,
okay. So fitness. You wanna lay the framework. I did not transfer those photos over to my computer.
all right.
Or
Let me grab.
oh, let
Dang it.
me. I think I need to make it to where you can share. There you go.
Let me grab myself here real quick. This is harder to do with one hand. Stupid cat. The only reason he's here is because my wife is at the office because I am the third out of three choices for the cats around. Ow! That was my nuts. Oh, jeez.
And sorry if I
Uh,
suck on cough drops. If you can hear it, let me know. But the worst thing right now for me is coughing and sneezing. Everything else I can almost do.
well, I got that guy needs a bath, and his fur is now thoroughly covering my workstation here. Okay, so uh, I thought this was a good um save image. I thought this was a good follow-up um to what we talked about last time, and especially as far as, you know, uh trying to come up with useful uh practical advice as well as the general, um was getting this image and a message from my wife.
Oh, I thought
Uh
you were going to name her.
well, I'm not gonna name her, but
Well, that's
yeah,
on you. I didn't do it.
that's on me.
I was trying to be.
Okay. All right. So I get this image and oh man, we started just a little too early. If Total Wine and More had sent me the text that my order was ready 10 minutes ago, I would have said, hold on, I have to go out real quick before we talk about bears. Ugh.
Yeah, you'll have a
Oh well.
good afternoon. How about
Okay.
that?
So anyway, I get this with the commentary that Google is being logical like me, and she doesn't like the answer.
Well, technically, Healthline is being logical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Healthline is hit or miss, but I would say 80% of the time they're pretty good.
yeah.
I actually do like
I
Healthline as a source.
I like this because one of the many things that drive us insane about the fitness industry is really the fitness memes, the Instagram and Facebook and whatever of the clickbait nonsense of this one easy trick to no, there is no one easy trick. There may be, you know, for some people, here's a thing you might not be doing that would be a simple addition that could help you. But when it comes to, I don't know if you ever had this, if you have this now, or if you don't have this as much since it's a private gym and you're no longer working at a gym, of I need to get ready for bikini season. Honey, it's 3 weeks until spring break.
Yeah,
That's not how this works.
I have one client that's still like that, and it's the only one that's like that that I haven't fired as a client because we've worked together so long. And actually, I worked with her
Yeah.
daughter first, post ACL tear, and so it's kind of like a bond with that whole
Hmm.
family. Uh, and I almost feel like I'd be letting her daughter down to give up on her mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, she just actually recently came back and it's like, oh, I'm going to Cancun in June. I'm like, it's May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so as we only partly jokingly say, the primary goal of most people, their primary fitness goal is to look better naked. And that's really about body fat percentage,
Hmm.
right? That's the main thing. And then, yeah, there's some muscle tone there, but that also helps with the body fat. And
Well,
it's
muscle
a,
tone is a really misunderstood concept in
yeah.
itself. I might rant on that. My rant has gotten very streamlined on that, so it won't take too long. But
but for that lower belly pooch, okay, well that's body fat. That's oh well, it's this one target area. That's not how it works. It's you have to tell your body that it needs to unlock stored fat and use it. And that is, well, you're going to need to be eating a good diet. You're going to be needing to regularly exercise. And then, of course, water and sleep. It's just, it's the balanced thing. The problem is, you know, uh, as she put it, is that, okay, yes, but what if you know and have the, you know, intellectual honesty to admit I can't do those things, at least not consistently. So, what is a short term way to get there in the long term? So, what are the steps you take in order to build the good habits? And this is, I'm going to make it even more specific here using my wife as a case because, all right, it's in some ways, it's easier to work with someone who is obese because those easy things, those simpler things is all right, let's start here with not even eliminate, but what's something, okay, you drink way too much soda. Let's cut it down, man. How much are you
mhm.
drinking? Okay, let's cut that in half. You're drinking 4 cans of Mountain Dew a day, cut it down to two. Let's just start there, okay? And you're going to see some pretty significant results pretty quick if you're someone who's obese. The the analogy I used with her was it was kind of the good news, bad news when we were first out of college and trying to fit, and someone introduced us to Dave Ramsey, and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So let's see what we can do to get out of debt quick. And we're looking at it and we're looking at some of these examples of what other people do, and we're going, but we don't do any of these things. I mean, that's the good news is we're not wasting money on these things, all these examples that Dave Ramsey comes up with or people call in or write in and talk to him about. I said, okay, that's good. We're not wasting money there. The bad news is that means there's just not much to cut,
Hmm.
right? So for a lot of people, um, when you start out on a fitness goal, oh, you might be really excited at first, especially if you're pretty out of shape or much more overweight, because you're going to see results quickly. But then you're going to plateau. And then that last little bit can be a big pain in the butt.
Okay, so this is actually from my learning and behavior class this last semester. It's the same across all industries. And this has been my point why I went back to school is because everything's the same but different. And this is the first part of it. You see that first section there, what is it labeled?
Baseline.
Baseline. You are tracking. If you're not tracking, you're not trying, right? And then TX is treatment. Treatment week 1, treatment week 2, and then reversal means you go back to your old system without the treatment and see if it continues to hold. And
See
you
if it's
see you
stuck.
yeah, you see you get a little bit of it sticking, but it wasn't perfect in my experiment that my home lab that I did. But that's the thing. That's the first part of it all, whether it's Dave Ramsey with economics or it's with nutrition or it's with exercise. What's your baseline? And nobody wants to track. Nobody wants to get on FitPal there's so many apps now
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
I hear are actually better. I haven't tried them yet because I'm so used to FitPal.
Yeah.
No one wants to measure. No one wants to do this. You've got to have a baseline. And I've got some things I know just from knowing you and your wife that I can throw out there here at the end. But as far as just general advice for everybody, get your baseline, track it for 2 weeks, and then we will develop a plan because like you said there might be something that jumps out. The my favorite thing as a coach is when someone sends their kid to me and says he needs to run a faster 40 and I have him run a 40 for me and he runs a 4.5 but his toes are out to the side and he's moving all these different ways and his arms are flailing and he's running with his elbows not his shoulders and all of these obvious things pop out and I'm like well shit this is going to be a 4.4 with a week of work right here because all I have to do is get him to point his toes forward. That's amazing. But then they come out and they run and it's like, let me frame by frame this because I got to find something that's holding him back right now. That's when it gets difficult. But you don't have that measurement unless you do a test, unless you do a baseline. Uh, so that's step one. Now, as far as the belly pooch, that's maybe we need to go into subcutaneous versus visceral fat and all of that in your belly. So if someone has a beer belly, right, it's hard, right? So if you tap it, it's hard. The
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
beer belly is mostly visceral fat. And by definition, to simplify it, is that's the fat that's all around your guts. That's the fat that surrounds your organs. So you hear fatty liver, that's visceral fat around the liver. Fat around the heart, that's visceral fat. All of the things that cover. The bad news is that's the one that's going to kill you. The good news is that's the fastest one to lose. So people say, "Oh, well, guys can lose weight so fast." Well, it's because we actually have a tendency to gain visceral fat versus subcutaneous fat. Uh, because and the key there is blood flow. So there's lots of blood flow around this area. So when your body needs fat, it breaks down that area faster because the signal gets there. The chemicals, the hormones, and the neurotransmitters that say, give me a little bit of energy, hit that place first. Then subcutaneous fat is the fat between the muscle and the skin. That's a little bit more difficult because of blood flow. And then when we break down the body in itself, there's more poor blood flow in certain
That
areas than
that's
others.
the flab. That's
That's the
the
flap. Yeah, that's the
that's the
that's the
love
wiggly stuff.
handles.
Yeah.
That's the spare tire. You
Hmm.
know that's what. where that is coming from, and that is usually what people are talking about when they're talking about, losing this kind of this last bit, you
Well,
know.
that's the look good naked part. Look good in
Yes,
clothes,
that too.
visceral fat makes you look like you have a belly, right? But look good naked, you can have a six pack and be fat with visceral fat. Look at your modern massive bodybuilders, the ones that are just the size guys, not the classical division.
Hmm.
They've got a gut, but it's cut because they're carrying a lot of
Ronnie Coleman was the first time I noticed. I was like,
yeah, they call
that
it what
dude's,
do they call it? HGH gut or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Their stomach is sticking out, but there's a six pack on top of it. That's not healthy. That's not healthy at all.
Hmm.
But it's the look good naked part, right? Because you still have a six pack. So everybody just, oh, you have big abdominal muscles. No, no, they're just being pushed out by your excessive organ size because you've been taking HGH. But the so the bad news is it kills you faster. The good news is it's faster to utilize. Now under the skin, it's slower because of blood flow. And that's because we store fat in that way ancestrally for long-term energy depletion. In the past, so we talk about the summer body now, that's actually contrary to nature. In the past, when we were hunter-gatherers and early farmers and very scarce on resources, we would gain weight during the summer and we would lose weight in the winter. So you're talking lower temperatures, food scarcity, all of those things. We would burn fat during the winter. And so you need this long, high energy, sustainable source that can basically feed your body uh, as time goes on. And I'm going to add a third component that most fitness people won't talk to you because you said stomach pooch.
Hmm.
Stomach pooch is different than big stomach, right? Big fat person. So I'm going to add a gravity component. But first, we'll go blood flow. Blood flow is lower to the subcutaneous fat on purpose. You don't want a whole lot of blood flow there because then you would store fat really quickly. That's another part of it is if you can gain it, if you can lose it quick, you can gain it quick. So subcutaneous fat you gain over time, over a long period of time. You have a certain number of fat cells. Now, this is the irony of nature and the paradox is you can gain fat cells, but you can't lose them. They're storage sites. So what people don't understand about a fat cell is it's kind of like a big balloon with a nucleus. So it's got a little brain in it, but then the rest of it is what we call a vacuole, and that fills with an oily substance, which is fat. And in fact, I've heard a nurse talk about, or a biology teacher that used to be a nurse. He said when overweight people would come in and they'd have to cut them open, you would cut them open, and it would just be like vegetable oil just spills out because they cut all those vacuoles. Uh, and so when you gain and lose weight, it's basically those are emptying and filling. If they all fill to the in the majority of your body, then the fat cell will duplicate to create more space. But once you have that duplicate cell, if you empty them all, it still stays there. That's why some people still have a little bit of wobble even when they've lost a lot of weight because it's not just the expanded skin, it's they have extra fat cells. So there's a lot of good and bad in that. The bad is actually just exacerbated by modern society. The good is that's how we lived. That's why we survived as a
Hmm.
species. So so poor blood flow, increasing fat cells, which you have two children. Your wife probably had a period in her life where her body was in defense mode and said, I may need this energy later because I'm caring for two people, which is also what determines placement of the fat. Hips for the ladies
Hmm.
and that pooch. For us guys, it's inside the gut, which is high yield, high but also high danger. But we use that when we're hunting back in the day, right? So uh, the blood flow is important. The gaining of fat cells, which she probably did while she was pregnant because everything was expanding. And then gravity, the pooch, things are going to melt from the top down because that's the world we live in. We're being pulled down to the ground constantly, right? So all of those three things make the pooch a big problem. The hips are
So
usually worse because that's where the poorest blood flow is in women.
yeah.
The
So
saddlebags.
so then uh for someone, see, and this may segue into the little bit of the mental state while working out is, you know, uh for some people that is a relief. It is easier to get into a good mental state because that's my me time, that's my happy place, that's my, I work out these frustrations, whether it's pumping iron or going on a run or hitting a bag. For some people, that that first step is easy because no, I need to vent, I need this time, you know. But for someone who really hates exercise, athleticism, etc., was never into that, that first step's going to be more difficult.
Yeah, and that's I didn't clarify it because I didn't want to we were going so long on our Wheel of
Mm-hmm,
Time episode last time that I didn't want to take us on a tangent, but I did want to clarify something you said about mental state and exercise.
mm-hmm,
Bad mental state going to exercise has two forms, and it can be positive or negative. If you're in a bad mental state for general reasons and you use exercise as an outlet, that's positive.
mm.
So it doesn't matter. You can be in a bad mood and go exercise and have a positive result. We had that exact same mug. I just noticed that.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right. Or at least it's similar enough that it looks like exactly the same. But the bad mental state can actually be alleviated or removed from exercise, from the high points of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
If your bad mental state is your negativity towards the exercise,
Yes, and that's where I can make a
that's the
personal,
difference. Yeah.
that's something I have to be really careful about because when um when you're dealing with a chronic issue, our favorite word in our Wheel of Time episodes, it becomes a slog.
Hmm.
It's, you can be overcome with a sense of hopelessness and helplessness of what is the point? Why even bother? I hate doing this. I have to do you know, I have to do this long chunk of Epsom salt soak and mobility work and just to feel relatively like a normal human being and be able to do normal human activity. This is frustrating and I hate it. Well, if I go into my exercise time with that mentality, it's not it's usually not going to go away. It's usually going to get worse. It's usually going to feed itself of, hey, I remember when I used to be able to do, I should be glad that I've worked myself back up to, yes, I'm squatting over a bench, but I'm doing, you know, front squats, and at the top of my pyramid I hit 225. And there's this little stupid jerk voice in the back of my head going, well, yeah, but 225 used to be your standard 5x5 and that you would bust into every 3 or 4 months. Shut up, voice. We're trying to focus on the positive here.
Yeah, there's a big difference between those two. So let's get back to the fat. Let's get back to the fat. So the major player here when you're talking about mood and exercise is cortisol. That's this is the this like emotion. Uh, Again, I blend the two fields I'm in, which is uh, what my ultimate goal doing this is there is no negative hormone. There is no negative emotion. There is just when it manifests and how it's utilized, right? So cortisol, I hate that it's gotten such a huge bad rap because it's aptly labeled the stress hormone. Your cortisol levels are super high in the morning because waking up is hard. Waking up is the most stressful thing you do in your life, right? Uh, which is in a survival situation, in a hunter gatherer situation, cortisol levels would spike at that time because stress actually increases your ability to do things. So in a natural state, we would wake up and then we would have to work to eat. You would either have to go hunt something, you would have to look for it in a gathering situation. And this is where the modern female attitude goes wrong is they're like, oh, well, we eat more vegetables because we were the gatherers. and you eat more meat because you were the hunters. That's why we don't like meat. You know how much work it was to gather tubers? You have to dig and then put them in whatever vessel your tribe had, like some kind of basket of a sort. And then you had to carry it back to the village. That's farmers' walks. That's tricep extensions. That's all of these things to get the food that you take back to the village to share with everybody. And oh yeah, your the guys of your tribe also, maybe if they were lucky, brought back a wildebeest, right? So you had all of that and you had to work for it. That's what cortisol does. The first thing in the morning, cortisol spikes. And why does it spike? Because it goes to your fat cells, gives it a signal and says, we need energy. If there's stored sugar in your liver, it releases that. If not, then the free fatty acids go to the liver that are created from that spike in the fat cells, go to the liver. And anybody who's like a super physiologist is going to tear me up on this. I'm oversimplifying it for a reason because I'm speaking to real people, hopefully, right? So those free fatty acids are going to go to the liver and they're going to be broken down into sugars and they're going to be sent to the muscle. That's what cortisol does because it prepares you for your day of activity before you eat. So cortisol is actually a good thing if used properly. So the best thing for you is to do something that utilizes cortisol in the morning, whether that's an ice bath like I do, whether that's morning cardio, getting your workout in right away, something along those lines, something that you use the stress for a productive physical means. Okay. The bad part of cortisol is when you get this signal, there's a cry wolf effect, right? So if you get this cortisol signal, but you've got special K in the morning, or you've got your donut in the morning, or whatever, then you keep giving this false signal. That false signal flips on its head and says, well, it wasn't stressful this time, but let's save some more for later. So then insulin comes in and shuttles all that into the fat cells. And there you go. So stress is good. You want stress going into a workout. Uh-oh, what do we got coming up?
We have, you know, a proper breakfast to help with that cortisol.
Mm. Yeah, and see, that's the worst thing you
From the
can do.
great philosopher Calvin and Hobbes. Look, it says right on the box, part of a wholesome, nutritious, balanced breakfast. And they show a guy eating 5 grapefruits, a dozen bran muffins. You know why you shake like that? Vitamin deficiency, I'll bet. Yeah. The great philosopher Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's stress hormone. Everything we have in our body is there for a reason, and it's there for a survival reason. The detachment is we're not surviving.
Mm.
So realistically, your wife's problem is life is too easy, which is a hard concept to kind of get around. Now, for the belly pooch, you do have to take that long-term approach. So, I think where I want to go with this first. So, get a baseline, find the one or two little things you can do. And that could be fasting in the morning. But if you want to eat in the morning, just make sure you do something before you eat. So she could, I mean, y'all live in like a suburb, right?
Hmm.
Take a walk around the block. Do walk for 2 blocks and then have your breakfast. There you go. What is
So
that? 10
I
minutes?
actually have a question about that. Of I was going to say which is better, and then I realized no, that's wrong. What's the difference between taking that walk right before you eat something and right after you eat something? Because both have their benefits, right?
Twofold. Twofold. In the morning, just to stay on the same theme, you are utilizing the stress hormone response because it has already mobilized blood sugar. So your blood sugar spikes in the morning. If you have a glucose test, it will spike in the morning whether you're fasted or not, because that's what cortisol does. Is it tells your body to release energy. So it will normalize that before you add anything to the system. And the second part is the muscles you use during that time, which would be your leg muscles in a walk, especially if it's a brisk walk. will their insulin receptors will be more sensitive to the blood sugar itself when you actually do eat. So if she's the kind of person that says I can't function if I don't eat breakfast, okay, just do something before breakfast.
Now, is there a minimum amount of time or exertion that needs to be done to
The
get
minimum
that
is more
benefit?
than you were doing before.
I like that.
The minimum is more than you were doing before. Like I said, at 2 blocks. Now, once you get used to 2 blocks, you might have to increase that, right? So yeah, the minimum is more than you were doing before.
Or here in 85, I mean, Texas, when it's 85 degrees at sunrise, you
Hmm.
know, that's why I got a treadmill.
Well, yeah, you can hop on the treadmill if you got I got, you know what? I got a little $50 on Amazon stair stepper thing. That's not really a stair stepper because it's just the two little pads that go like this. That is deceptive as hell because you start and you're like, what am I even doing? And then 5 minutes in, you're like, my legs burn. Like,
Yeah, I've hopped on one of those things thinking this is going to be stupid and worthless, and then you realize how much you have to balance, and you're, oh no, this is actually doing something.
hmm. So that would be, I think that's a good first step for a lot of people. Just find something you can do right before you start your calorie day, whether that's
Hmm.
cream in your coffee or Special K in the morning or whatever. I typically don't eat till later, but that's just because I don't like eating when I get up in the morning.
Hmm.
I never did, even when I was on the traditional 6 meal a day thing. I had to force myself to eat straight out of bed, uh, which I'm glad it turned out that that was bunk science because then it just kind of fell into my preference, right?
Right.
Uh, so the key is do something before you eat. That could be even if you, I mean, she's what, an architect or an engineer,
Software engineer.
software engineer. Do some work. Write a few lines of code. Do something that stimulates your brain. Do something that stimulates
Really?
your body. Yeah. Anything that's semi stressful to you. Semi, and I'm not saying like stressful, like I'm all stressed out and I'm biting my nails. Stressful is in I'm doing something productive. Stressful is it stress in the proper use of the term. Like I had to get
Hmm.
up and I had to dig the tuber out before I could eat. That kind of thing. Uh,
So even a bit of mental exercise
mhm.
will
Yeah, it's something,
get things
something,
moving.
yeah, something productive for you before you eat would be my first thing. The second thing is now we'll rewind to before bed. Rewind to before bed. The last thing you want to do is spike your insulin before you sleep. So I remember, so I'll go to my wife. We were listening to Andrew Huberman while we were driving to my parents' house, the 3 hour, 4 hour drive to my parents' house one time, and it was on sugar and sweets and things. And he was going on droning as he usually does, a 3 hour episode on any given topic, right? And she just said halfway through it, she goes, just tell me when I can eat my ice cream. Is what she kind of like pointed at the stereo and said that. And I looked at her and I said, I could tell you that right away, just not before bed, which is when most people eat their ice cream, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you spike your insulin, growth hormone and insulin work counter to each other. And so it's a scale. If you raise one, the other goes down. And so if you spike your insulin, which a high sugar snack like ice cream would do, you're going to reduce your growth hormone overnight. You're not going to recover as well. So, and recovery from your day is why we sleep realistically, right? So before bed, no sugar spike. Do something before you eat in the morning. That would be, I think, just good general advice for everybody in the world. Some people do it naturally because they don't live in the burbs like we do, right?
Hmm.
And that's one of the biggest problems. It's marketed, have your Special K in the morning and then go for your run, right? No, go for the run and then have your Special K. You can have your granola, you can have your ice cream, just not right out of bed or right before bed. If you like to eat before you sleep like I do, high protein food because it's just protein going through your system and absorbing. That's it.
Hmm.
That would be first step. Now for you particularly because I know the situation, what did you need when y'all came down and y'all were frying wontons? What did we not have in the house that y'all needed?
Was it vegetable oil?
Vegetable oil, yes. Vegetable and seed oils. Find a way to cut back from those. They're just bad news. They will signal your system to store fat.
Really?
Hmm.
See, I thought the seed oils were supposed to be good.
Not the way they process it,
Hmm.
because they have to go through a process to become an oil that stays liquid at room temperature. If it's something like avocado oil, where did they just squeeze it out of it, that's fine. Olive oil, where they just squeeze it out of it, that's fine. But your canola oils, your sunflower oils, your corn oils, all of those things go through a process where it denatures it. And it's just like our trans
Ah.
fat talk. So it's denatured. It's not the
So
right.
so the advice that, well, you need something with a high smoke point because the danger is when you denature it when it gets too hot, basically you're denaturing it again or worse is
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying. So
Yeah. Yeah. But there's a fix to it. Avocado oil has a very high smoke point. It's like 500 degrees. If you're cooking over 500 degrees, you're overcooking. I'm sorry. So, so the avocado oil, yes, it's not cheap, but you can reuse it. I re-jar it after I use it up to like
yep,
5 or 6 times, depending on
that's
what
what
I'm
I got
doing.
cheesecloth for.
Yeah. Yeah. So your olive oils are great for you. Your saturated fats, you can get some lard. Get some lard. Now, those wontons that y'all saved in my freezer, I did them in bacon grease. The second time we
Mm.
ate them, and Nicole looked at me and she goes, "Why are these so much better this time?" I'm like, "It's the oil I cooked them in." Yeah, butter has a low smoke point. Olive oil has a low smoke point, so you can't really like fry anything in them. You can kind of ish saute them, but your avocado oil, your bacon grease, that kind of stuff has a very high smoke point. So we've talked on ad nauseum about the big, why did we switch to vegetable oils? Oh, because the Crisco industry.
Hmm.
We basically this is one of the good and bads. So the good was we needed to supplement our farmers because they were dying at the time. They were growing wheat and corn. And after the Great Depression and everything, that's when a lot of these things started coming through. Is those were all actual plans to supplement the farming industry, because what could go wrong? We didn't know the science yet. It's oil. Oil's oil. We can fry it in vegetable oil, or we can fry it in lard. Our farmers are growing corn. Let's supplement that. Let's put a bad message out about saturated fats to get people to go to Crisco, and it saved a lot of farmers. A lot of farmers' livelihoods it saved at the expense of our long-term health, but there was actually no forecasting for that because we didn't have the science to know what these fat, denatured fat molecules are doing inside our body. Fast forward to now, we got to get off that train because we have the science now. And butter's easy to make, man. Get some heavy whipping cream, put it in your KitchenAid, and let it spin. Let it spin for 15 minutes. Throw some salt in there. You're good.
Yep. If you want fancy butter, throw some herbs in there.
Yeah. So this first step, look at your evening and your morning routine for the long-term fat. Track what you're eating to find to hopefully find something that flares out, or even little places where you can say, okay, I can't eliminate this, but I can reduce. And the last part would be to try to wean off vegetable oil sources. Those would be my big advices for the person I know I'm dealing with here.
Yeah, and then uh
And be patient.
modify for yourself
Yeah.
accordingly.
And be
Of
patient. Yeah.
Yeah, use the same process for yourself when you're looking at, okay, what can I start reducing to, you know, if not fully cut, at least get down to the point where, you know, I don't need my ice cream every night, just, yeah, on the weekend treat or whatever,
Hmm.
right? You know, you don't necessarily have to completely eliminate it, but if you can get it down to where those things that we know are bad for us can be a treat, you know, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, and speaking for the general female out there is, especially if they were skinny when they were young, that I need to be ready for the bikini season. Typically they got away with that when they were younger.
Hmm.
And it's not when I talk about age, yes, there are the length of our telomeres and all of that plays into it. But the approach I use for age is the accumulation of processes. So yes, that worked for you because you had X number of fat cells in your body. So you could empty them by skipping a meal and going for a run in the morning. But the next year, there were X plus three. The next year, there were X plus six. Then every year, there was a little bit of accumulation going on. And then it's one of those things. It's a spectrum. So you only notice it when it hits the point that's noticeable.
Mm.
And so you've hit the point where you can't jump on the treadmill and skip a meal and look exactly the same as you wanted to in the bikini. That's when you hit that point. But it happened over 15 years. And so you have to take the same approach. No, it's not going to take 15 years to lose it again, but it will take time and diligence. And that's the thing. You can't just jump on the treadmill and skip a meal anymore. You got to jump on the treadmill every day for 6 months and have a reduced calorie intake for those 6 months. So that you have to acknowledge it's an acknowledgement thing. It's a self responsibility thing, which a lot of people have trouble with. I did this over so many years, so now I have to do this over this amount of time and take a long term approach. There's no good answer. Just like you said that I know you're going to say this. I gave a few easy pointers to look at, but at the same time, it is going to be a process, especially with the low belly fat, because low belly fat and fat in the hips, the saddlebag area, are going to be the most what we call stubborn fat, because biologically, those were the areas that were for long term starvation. Long term starvation sucks. So if you're going to do it without your life sucking, you have to take a longer term timeline to it.
All right. Well, that was supposed to be a quick follow-up to last week's fitness episode, but we went on for a while.
Well,
But
it helps that I don't even have to do research for this one
yeah.
because it's already been done. But
So where
uh,
where are we segueing to now?
were we going to Stupid Girls and Bears?
Well,
Let me see if I can find. Did I save the meme?
while you're looking for your side of things, let me point out from the political side, get myself in trouble here, that um if we are able to recover as a country and get back to at least some semblance of what we used to, history should not be kind to the Obama administration and should consider him one of the worst presidents we've ever had. I mean, we keep uncovering the iceberg of, hey, that thing that's happening now, yeah, it started then. Remember that? Like, remember remember this? Does anyone remember this? That and also remember, I could have gone back further because remember the war on women that started in the 2012 campaign. Actually, no, I believe it actually started in the 2008 campaign. And it was resurrected in 2012 against Romney, but it started in 2008 because remember, Hillary was supposed to be the nominee. She was the presumptive nominee. And then they kept recycling it when they needed it as a talking point. And so Obama launches the It's on Us campaign to end sexual assault on campus. Why do we need to end sexual assault on campus? Well, because we just rewrote the rule book and uh, everything's terrible. Why is everything terrible? Because it's an epidemic, okay? With This is the Yahoo News article from January of 2014 with 1 in 5 female students assaulted while only 1 in 8 student victims reported it. Okay, remember the darn, you remember that number, 1 in 5. That was thrown around for years. And where did it come from? Well, this is from Forbes, which leans right, but is really just very centrist and
No, no,
establishment.
no. They used to lean right, and then they
Well, that's
sold to a
true.
Chinese company. And
That's right.
yeah,
All right. So this is from that time frame. This is a very long article talking about uh the difficulty in dealing with this question because you don't want to sound like you're victim blaming or shaming or ignoring people, but on the other hand, you have to be able to talk about, all right, if you're going to throw a ludicrous number out there, and I do mean ludicrous, 1 in 5, okay, 20% of women on US colleges, you're talking about like something that would happen in a war zone of that would be an epidemic of rape. The claim that 1 in 5 women will be victims of sexual assault or attempted sexual assault, and some claims even higher numbers, is based on a number of surveys. This is a complicated issue that can't be even close to fully addressed in a single blog post. These surveys suffer from many serious technical problems. For now, it is worth noting that few of these surveys actually ask students if they were sexually assaulted. Rather than asking students if they were sexually assaulted, these surveys ask students if they were subjected to certain behaviors. If a student responds that they were, that student is reported as a victim of sexual violence. But these surveys are asking about breathtakingly broad swaths of behavior. They ask if students ever had sex after their partner expressed displeasure or criticized their attractiveness, because that's pressuring you into having sex. They ask if students had sex with someone after they showed they were unhappy. Students who answer affirmatively are counted in the 1 in 5 statistic. And this led to, let me scroll up here to the,
that's like the climate change stuff, where
this is from
97%
2019.
of scientists agree. Well, the
Yes.
questionnaire was actually, is the planet getting warmer? Yes. Do humans have something to do with it? Yes. That's pretty vague because
Yeah, and it
something
was
could
some
be
grad
1%.
student who
Yeah.
collated this data and then threw out the 96, 97% number. This is actually from 2019. So this was years later and is still going on. Uh, so the doesn't mean what you think you mean is the headline from this Forbes article. And one of the uh, stories that is shared here to make the point uh, is about this guy in Oregon who had his life ripped apart by the college, who went around interviewing him and all of his friends and trying to track down any sexual partner or potential sexual partner he might have had, all because a woman claimed that he reminded her of someone who raped her months before. That's what this led to. That is what this political football, this political tool that manipulated numbers and attempted to manipulate people. Maybe you should have had rules for radicals up there behind you. That's what this led to. And I bring that up because it's not an accident that all of the women in these videos saying, "Oh yeah, I'd much rather."
Sorry, you did get me on the meme game there because
Yeah, I'd
this is a subject I had heard about a long time ago, and then you brought it up like it was new, but I had not. So you had seen the memes and didn't know the
yep,
subject, and I
yep,
knew the subject and didn't know the memes, but I got
yep.
a better one. Hold on.
Oh no. Uh, yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I initially chuckled at, and then I thought, oh wait, no, that's not funny, is one of the gotchas from people on this is, so you're saying that a man, a random strange man that you run into in the woods, is more terrifying and potentially dangerous than a bear, but it's okay if he follows my 13-year-old daughter into the restroom, so long as he claims he's pretty.
I didn't
The
know
pro-
that's where you were going with this.
well, I don't want to dwell on that because really the problem here is the mentality. And I chuckled at that, and then I realized, well, no, because the young girls, women who are making this claim and defending this claim, they would have absolutely no problem with the double think to required to call you a transphobe for pointing that out and still say, I'm safer with a bear in the woods.
Yeah, and this is a problem of luxury. We see this only happening in the West, right? So in Western societies, I should have had Heinrich up, the weirdest society, right? Uh, these are luxury beliefs, right? Because they can have that opinion because they're just trying to be nice, because they're almost never going to be in a situation where they're going to be assaulted. That is actually why these things propel forward, because we make a big deal about the assault when almost nobody's in that situation. We look at helicopter parenting. Why did helicopter parenting start? Because of child abductions. The chance that your child is going to be abducted on the street corner playing with his four friends is almost zero. But if it happens to you, it's 100% devastating. So we got into this mode of helicopter parenting, which has destroyed our children. Now we've got in this mode of, yes, the person who is sexually assaulted is devastated for the rest of their life,
Mm-hmm.
male or female, especially with children. But you don't have to blow the numbers up to make that point. I came across this when I was first, when we remember my first awakening, when I started, hey, what's going on here? And now there's a lockdown, so I have time to read things. And I read D'Angelo and Sensoi on the Are We Even Equal and everything. And I was just, the thing I did was, I was, every time they wrote a stat and sourced it for their view, I said, well, I'm just going to check the source. That's all I'm going to do. And I checked the source on domestic violence. And they say every 9 seconds, someone is a victim of domestic violence. I'm like, every 9 seconds is a lot. So I did the math. Every 9 seconds in a year is a certain number. It's like some 2.5 million or something, 2.5 million. And then I looked up the statistics on domestic violence. And I was like, oh, like 300,000. There's a big jump between 300,000 and 2.5 million. For those 300,000, it's horrible. For that, the big jump though, for an agenda,
Mm-hmm.
changes the game, because now you're basically setting a stage where every cop that shows up to a house is going to assault the male in the house and take them to jail because of your agenda against the patriarchy, right? And that's when I started getting on my kick on mathematical models. I was like, well, why do we have this number? Let me keep reading this article. You have to make an assumption. You have to assume that what's the difference between 300,000 and 2.5 million? That 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 7 cases are unreported for every case that is reported, right? Ish, somewhere around there. And I'm like, that's a big assumption. Where did you get the data that makes you make that assumption? Same thing with sexual assault. 1 in 5, 20%. 2% would be still an astronomical number, because I could just look at the street. There's probably about 100 people on this street. 2 of them were sexually assaulted. That's a big number.
In that Forbes article, he makes that point of and uses the numbers of, there are about 10 million women in college in 2019. So even if 1% are victimized by sexual violence, that's a lot of sexual violence.
It's 100,000. Yeah.
So So why do you need to make it 20%? Because you need to scare the crap out of people.
Hmm.
Because in order, the quote by Voltaire, people who can make you believe absurdities can get you to commit atrocities. What happened in the French Revolution versus what happened in the American Revolution, right? It it got nasty. That's
Yeah,
that's
lots
where
of people
Napoleon
died in
came from.
both, but at least your opponent had a gun in the American
Hmm.
Revolution. You
Hmm.
know, they weren't kneeling in front of a
Yeah,
big blade that dropped.
yeah. And when when you I mean, talk about luxury beliefs. I'm going to make things really gross and tragic here for a second. I can't help myself. So when I
Luxury beliefs, just to give credit, is a term coined by Rob Henderson. So if anybody wants a good follow on Twitter, he's really great.
who was it? I think Glenn Lowry says this, but did Soul first come up with the idea that no, Gad Sad isn't he's the one who says that something so dumb could have only come from an academic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parasite
Yeah.
mine. Yeah.
So I had been seeing the memes for like over a week, and then last week sometime, like Tuesday night, while I was looking at YouTube, and this Sargon video popped up on my recommended, and it was only like 10 minutes long, and I'm like, all right, let's see what the heck is going on here. And so I watched this video by Sargon where he laid the groundwork and showed the video clips from where it started, and then some of the TikTok clips from how it continued to escalate. And in his video, he pointed out, you know, um, you people have no clue. I mean, you are so clueless. And here is a very horrible, intangible example of how idiotic what you're saying is. This is from, I don't remember there's the poor girl. I don't remember the year here, but this was a little while ago. But she called her mom as she was being eaten alive by bears. The call lasted an hour as this female brown bear and her two cubs ate this poor girl alive.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what happens when you run into a bear in the woods. That's what a wild animal is. And bears in particular, while they look cute and cuddly, and you can find a video of Betty White sitting next to a giant grizzly feeding it marshmallows. Yeah, that's a thing that can happen, but it is also a 500 to 1,000 pound murder machine
Yeah, well,
and
not murder machine because murder
eating
implies
machine.
intent. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the question is the bear hungry? That's the big question. And Betty White sitting next to the bear is a bear that's very well fed by its
and
trainers.
this was a bear that was rescued and brought to a uh, uh, animal sanctuary to heal after
Hmm.
being injured. And so it was used to being around humans and being fed by humans
I
rather
was about
than
to say, and
feeding
being fed by
on
them. So it
humans.
knew the human was a food source, not in the human body, but in I present you food. And
Mm-hmm.
classical conditioning, you brought this up not that long ago, Pavlovian conditioning. That bear was trained to associate human with external food source, whereas bear in wild is conditioned to say animal that has flesh that is tasty to me. They have no secondary conditioned response. They only have the autonomic response. They only have the natural stimulus versus the conditioned stimulus. And this is what people don't understand about animals. Even your dog, if your dog grew up in the wild and was an adult dog when you found it, is not going to be the lap dog you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, feral dogs are the most uninhibited killing machines you will find. They will
They
pack
are
up.
a serious problem in South Asia and South
Mhm.
America because the packs have gotten so large and they're in such close proximity to humans that they're a real danger.
And the thing about dogs versus wolves and coyotes is dogs have been bred to acknowledge threat, not just food. So we knew when we had a sheep, a herd of Barbados sheep at my grandparents' farm before they passed away, and the ram was killed one night. And we knew it was dogs and not coyotes because they didn't eat it. They just killed it and left it because ram threat, ram not just food. And
Mm-hmm.
then the sheep were torn up by coyotes after the ram was dead because they actually ate the sheep because they thought sheep food, not
Mm-hmm.
sheep threat. So we did a good job training dogs and breeding them in a way that had an additional basically mechanism for violence, which sounds bad, but it's a good thing with dogs because they're protective. But animals in the wild kill for food, or they kill if they're threatened. Dogs have been trained to just perceive threat versus actually have to be attacked to be threatened. And that's a big difference. But bears, you brought up cubs. That might have been a my cubs are threatened response, and then tasty. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so then, oh, come on in, cubs. This
Mm-hmm.
this this person is tasty. And I was looking it up while you brought that up, but I don't even need to bring a story. But bears start at the hips because they eat the entrails first. They
Mm-hmm.
eat you ass first, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a long time to die. And if anybody wants to know what ass pain is, I'm your man right now. You see if you're watching this, you see I elevated my desk because I needed to stand up for a while. Although
Yep.
I'll shout out for our future sponsors, Comfy Life. This is an amazing little pillow here. I can last a little while on it, but if you want to sponsor us, give me. You don't need to send me another pillow, but you can.
And here you, our few viewers, thought we were done with butt stuff.
Yeah.
Nope.
No, no,
Still
no.
talking
But
butt stuff.
it's a painful experience because there's a lot of nerve endings down there because you're actually encouraged to poop because it's good for your body. And anything that you're encouraged to do naturally has a pleasure sense to it. Every pleasure sense has a pain counter to it. And
Mm.
so you are being eaten from one of the most nerve sensitive spots in your body, but also a spot that doesn't kill you very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point about the Cubs is here, this is let me show you how to eat food.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably a big reason it took an hour.
Well, and we as humans lose sight of the fact that we have refrigerators. Animal in the wild needs to keep their prey alive as they eat it as much as possible because it's fresher. The longer it's alive, the more fresh it is.
Yeah. Unless there is the reasons big cats kill their prey
Is
is
because their
because
prey is usually way bigger than they are.
and or they're usually around other big cats.
Mm-hmm.
Bears are the apex predator in almost every place there are bears. They
Mm-hmm.
only have to worry about other bears and they're pretty territorial. So they're not as worried about silencing their kill.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a big cat goes for the neck, not just to kill, suffocate, but to prevent noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ugh.
So okay. So let's get back to the reason
Yeah,
you
get
brought
away
that up.
from the ickiness and the how the hell did we end up here in the first
Well, the
place?
ickiness it sets the stage
Hmm.
because it shows how ridiculous the notion is,
Yeah.
right? So men are so dangerous that they are less preferred than the thing that eats you ass first, right? The thing that can eat you in the most painful way possible. My two ways of not wanting to die are burning alive or mauled by a wild bear. Those are the two top and by far. I'm
Hmm.
actually cool with dying any other way. All right. Those two things are the things I'm going to avoid, unless my son is in between, and then I'll get in between the bear and him. But other than that, I'd probably fight the bear because it'd probably be more likely to kill me if I fought it.
Hmm.
That's actually the reason to fight the bear. It would probably be more likely to at least knock you out in the process. That would be a good thing. But that aside, so the thing that could be the second most horrible way to die, in my opinion, other than burning alive, is the thing women prefer because of this message. This message that's floated around in Western society where we are so detached from real life and real danger that I can be in a room with a female and you've got 269 other episodes to know my opinion on being overprotective of women, and they might be as scared as if I was a bear. More scared than if I was a bear because of messaging.
Yeah,
That's
especially if
irresponsible.
they're especially if they're under the age of what, 30? Or are we even older than that now with some of these crazies? I mean, we what does Gen Z count as? Because we had this weeks ago looking at the gap, the growing gap between Gen Z males and females of political ideology and how boys are becoming less woke, but girls are becoming either more woke or not budging. So that
More,
there's a
more.
yeah. So there's a pretty sizable gap there, and it's pretty damn depressing.
Well, and part of that is the sheltering itself is women benefit from everything ridiculous right now other than women's sports. So we'll throw that we'll put that on the side. But as far as in the workplace, in this argument, this discussion we're having about Me Too and sexual assault, women are so far detached from being uh, responsible for their choices, I should say. That might be a blunt way of saying, or a very ham-fisted way of saying what I'm thinking, but they're so far detached from the consequences of their vote, of their opinions online, of everything. Opinions online being a good example because you're not getting punched in the face because of what you said, right?
Hmm.
There was one on the moms and dads of the town I live in, and someone posted something about migrants being bust into a certain place right near here. There were a Walmart parking lot right near here, and one of the first people to comment on it was a suburban mommy that said, "Good, I'm going to be there with food and water for them because there's nobody illegal on stolen land." And
Where do you live, honey?
I resisted the urge to type something because you can stress yourself a lot by engaging in these things. I resisted the urge to say you paid a lot for that degree, but the other part of it was, hey, I got a truck. I can get probably 10 of them to your house. What's your address?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the luxury leave because she can go out there and hand water out. That's nice to do, right? But I guarantee you she's not sheltering any of them. They're not at her house right now. She's not cooking them dinner. That's the luxury. That's the distance that the average female does, especially in suburban type societies. They have their struggles. Men are partly to blame. Maybe we'll go into that a little bit with when I give my little framing of the abortion thing because it's our fault too as men. But yeah, it's a ridiculous notion that puts light on a bigger issue, which is the mind fuck of the dating game and the relationship game that has come out of the Me Too movement.
I was looking for something.
Well, while you look for that, let me pause this and take a little bathroom break. And sorry for the
So,
hiccup. Yeah.
mini tangent here, but I think it applies to the general theme of luxury beliefs, and a big part of that idea is just of where that comes from is just pure ignorance. That you are allowed and to have, and one of the reasons you have these luxury beliefs is because you are so wholly ignorant of nature and of history. So to the suburban mom saying there's no illegal people on stolen land, stolen, I guess you didn't go through Texas history when you were a kid. Hey, anyone remember what happened at Goliad? Okay, one of the cool things about Texas is like in the Northeast, you have these families that are we can trace our lineage all the way back to the Mayflower. And that's pretty cool. Here in Texas, you have families who can trace their lineage back to before the Mayflower, to the earliest Spanish settlers that came into Spanish colonial territory to begin settling and farming and establishing towns. And so the people that were fighting in the Texas Revolution were Mexicans. That's why we call them Texicans, because their origins were way back in the Spanish colonies and then in Mexico as an independent state, and then Texas as an independent state, and then a state. Okay. And the reason the revolution happened is because Mexico was becoming increasingly abusive and totalitarian. And that led to the flag of Goliad. Why does the flag of Goliad look like this? Because Mexico massacred about 450 prisoners after they basically said what the British said at Lexington and Concord was, hey, look, we're just here to take your cannons and your powder, and then we'll leave you alone. Well, okay. We changed our mind. We're gonna kill you all. About 450, which led to, which is why there is also this flag, which is the flag of Gonzales. Hey, we're just here to take that cannon back that we gave you. Okay, come and get it. It's loaded with double canister, but come and get it. Okay. So the pure ignorance that allows you to have that belief, and again, also the who was it who was standing there by that cannon with the flag telling them, telling the totalitarian Mexican government, come and take it. Who was it that was massacred? And then who was it who suffered when those 450 men were massacred? I doubt the women and children were treated that well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's my yeehaw Texas moment, and we are done with the silly nonsense. Now
Yeah,
on to different silly nonsense.
so let me summarize that last point. Females out there, if you're listening, I love you. I love you when you're beautiful as well. I love you when you're not beautiful, but not in that way. We'll be friends. You're safer with me than with a bear. I'm sorry. That's the end all be all. Now there are men that would be more uh not as friendly, and they can be seditious and they can be abusive and they can be all of these things. But that is more rare than 20%.
Okay, I do have one more point to make because you've just reminded me of. So I think I've said it on here before. Snarkily talked about we need to repeal I think it's the 17th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. And the snark is it's not that giving women the right per se is what led to the ballooning of the progressive movement. It was how the vote was given to women. What a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of women oppose the 17th Amendment. Why? Because voting isn't a right.
Yeah,
The
that
franchise is not a right.
that's a huge discussion in the independent circles
Mm-hmm.
is it's not an inalienable right. The
Mm-hmm.
right to life, liberty, and happiness, right? A pursuit of happiness, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a right to happiness. You have a right to pursue it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but the suffrage is not a right. It's a responsibility.
It, it,
And
mm-hmm.
there's another side to it. And the big argument is, well, if women have the right to vote, they also should be subject to the draft and things like that, which is not my opinion, because my opinion is the
Mm-hmm.
draft should not exist.
Not just the
But
draft, but um, you were obligated to run out there and help with a bucket brigade.
mhm,
The the old Western movie of let's form a posse, you were obligated for these things. You were obligated, much as you are now, you don't ignore a jury summons. Okay. There were obligations that went
Most
along
people
with,
do.
yeah, there were obligations that went along with the franchise. And when the debate for the 17th Amendment was going around, women were told, yeah, don't worry about those. You don't have to do any of that. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm on board. The
Mhm.
idea that you can have a say in the government when you have no obligation in running things, in running the community, that's upside down and backwards.
Well, it's I think a simpler way to say it is the distance between the repercussions of your actions
Mm,
changes your actions.
mm,
We'll go back to Twitter. You know, getting in a flame war on Twitter has very few repercussions because especially most people that don't even have their name as their handle, right? They're an anonymous thing out there just arguing with people. There's no repercussion of that other than your own mental health, which most people who think they're right about something can say, "Oh, it's the other person, not me." Right?
yeah, yeah,
So so the further you're removed from the repercussions of your actions, and you're talking the vote here, there's no one more far removed from the repercussions of our political system than the suburban housewife.
well, okay, so segueing to where you want to go, I actually do have a segue there, and I don't know what you're going to say, and I'm curious because so one of the statistics that is incontrovertible, but people call you bad names when you point this out, is that the number one predictor of um, bad male behavior, whether it's education, economic, or criminal, is a single mother. There are all sorts of other predictors. There are all sorts of other elements that go into that. But the number one predictor by far is, did that boy, young man grow up with a single mother?
And
Was he
yes,
raised by a
you
single
you
mother?
did push me. It's a reverse order of what I was going to go, but you did segue right into that because
Well,
my whole thing is reframing the
mm-hmm.
discussion.
Well, no,
And
but the reason I bring that up is because the number one predictor of how you vote, it's not actually your race or your gender or your age or any of that other stuff you
well, if
might think.
if you're saying male female, remember we have to stick with sex, not
Mhm.
gender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever. Marital status. That is by far the number one predictor of how you're going to vote if you vote.
as a female or in general,
Both.
both. Okay,
See,
I have to look up those statistics.
yeah.
That's actually news to me. But
Hmm.
okay, so
Women
that
much more so, but even single men, especially younger single men, they vote Democratic
okay,
much more than they vote
that was going to be
Republican.
that was going to be part two, but it fits better now with what you said as a part one. Reframing the discussion. So when we talk about single parents and men being out of the household, and we talk about the welfare state, this is part of the problem is we keep blaming women. The welfare state allows you to not have a husband, so that's why everything is the way it is. As a man, what is the benefit of monogamy? This is a question for you. What is the benefit of monogamy as a man?
As
If
a
we're talking
man,
about if we're talking selfish
mhm,
gene type
selfish
perspective.
gene type thing, I know those children are mine and I have ready access to sex.
I know those children are mine and they will survive
And they will survive because I am here to help make sure they survive. Yeah.
because I'm here to help make sure they survive. Yes. So the chances of your children in the olden days of thousands of years of our development versus the last several hundred, your children would not survive if you left the mother. And for two reasons. They wouldn't have the resources because taking care of children and gathering resources are counterproductive activities. And the other one is infanticide because the mother would kill the children. So those are the two reasons that the male was encouraged to stick around once we got our big brain and we started developing over a long period of time versus being able to pop out of mom like a gazelle and get up and walk,
Hmm.
right? So monogamy for males is encouraged by the fact that you not only want to make sure that you're the father, which is where jealousy comes from. Possessiveness with males is the big trait of male jealousy, right? Possessiveness to make sure that there's no other chance that it's not your child. And then the other part is this kid is going to take a long time to develop. You know, and in the hunter gatherer days, that was about 3 or 4 years where they're pretty much viable and they'll live. It's okay. But that's 3 or 4 years. And by that time, mom's ready to have another baby. Like you said, availability of sex. You have availability of sex, and well, now you got another one. Now you got another one you got to stick around long enough. And after 4 or 5 of those, you've lived your paternal life, right? So the motives, the inclination for pair bonding is parental certainty and survival of offspring. Otherwise, we just spread our seed. We'd be like freaking mushrooms and just a bunch of spores because I can just screw a bunch of women and, some of my kids will survive, some of them won't, whatever. But the certainty of that actually increased your rate of spreading of again, it's in selfish gene type thinking of the lineage of your genetics going on into the next. And even then, if you can make it to grandfather, you have a second. You can teach your child to make sure that that second part was still you
Hmm.
going forward. So you've got that motive, and this is a natural motive. This is an ingrained motive. So let's talk welfare. Everybody blames the mom for not keeping the man around when I'm the dude and my kid's going to survive whether I'm there or not. Where's the motivation to stick around? We need to make this a man argument. We are men. We take care of our children. You have grandchildren. We do our job. We need to put the fire or put the hammer down on other men. We need
Hmm.
to stop talking to women. Yeah, just because the state's going to take care of your child doesn't mean that they're going to be good for it because there's a part of taking care of a child that's not money. And I think that actually is the big player in fatherless households. It's not the mom. The mom wants the man around because who wants to work all night as a nurse and still have a child at home, right? The mom wants a man around. The welfare state makes it a little easier, but it's actually on the man. The man needs to stick around. And I think that's the reframing of that part of the argument. That was going to be part two, but I
Hmm.
want I want your comments on that.
No, I think you're right. And I think that is why someone like Jordan Peterson was so appealing, is because he was basically saying that even if he wasn't talking about this issue particular and indirect, he was still basically saying, hey, we need to recapture, we need to remember what masculinity is and why it is. And that's really what Jason Whitlock's focus has been. He still talks about sports, but when he's talking about social issues, that's what he's talking about is, hey, men, if you're going to call yourself that, then act like a man. And that includes things like stop just spreading your seed everywhere. No, no, that child is yours, so it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
You take care of it.
Well,
That's on
and
you.
and I think an understanding, and this is where I will sympathize with men because we don't have this understanding. You're not taught it anywhere, and I'm sorry, we are social beings. We need to be taught things. The thing I just talked about was inherent,
Hmm.
wanting to make sure this thing happened. But once society made sure that thing happened, the inherent part gets thrown out the window.
Hmm.
So the part that we need to be taught is your progeny money doesn't fix everything about their life. They need a certain thing, which is dad.
They need that masculine balance to the
Mm-hmm.
feminine mother caregiver instinct. They
Mm-hmm.
need that masculine balance, that masculine order to properly learn through, you know, you brought we were talking about nature previously, and you know, that's what what mothers do in the wild is show, and in some cases fathers, although that's much more rare in the animal kingdom, but it's they are teaching by showing, just by being there and going to work every day and then coming home and helping take care of things. You are teaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's further than that. I think the message that needs to be hammered home is it's not about kid, it's about grandkid.
Mm,
If we get men in that mindset, you're going to have different parents because the child you raised is going to be the father or mother of the grandkid.
mm-hmm.
And anything you do is going to snowball down. So we need to change the mindset. It's not about just the kid is taken care of. It's about what happens to the grandkids, what happens to their kids, what happens to the kids' future generations. It's the mindset of plant a tree you'll never sit under. That's the
Mm-hmm.
hallmark of wisdom. If I can plant a tree I will never sit under, I am paying it forward to the next generation.
Boy,
And
it's why this Gen Z stuff we talk about is so damn depressing to me. It's because those are the people who are going to be building the world that my grandchildren have to live in.
mhm,
What are they going to be building?
yeah, and well, yeah, we will see.
Well, but also to your point, that is also why that growing split between young men and young women in that ideology is so scary, is because to your point, all right, fine, we win the argument and we convince enough men to be men and turn this around, but what happens when the woman says no fault divorce, I'm tired of this, I'm out of here?
Well, and that's why I think the reframing is important. See, again, I
Mm-hmm.
keep hating that I have to help you conservatives is part of the ick that the average female voter gets that votes on these things and keeps flying all over the place is the fact that they keep getting blamed for it. Put the onus on the man and say this is where I'm standing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have that no fault divorce whatever, but your man wasn't also manly either. So let's put the fire under dudes, and I think that will at least alleviate the ick factor when it comes to women voting for conservative causes because all they get is handmaid tale kind of stuff, right? And that plays to the emotions. Where and the counter argument is, no, we know what's best for you. Well, that plays right into the handmaid's tale because now you're just putting the hammer down when it's like, look, we need to fix men. We're trying to do that as a conservative nation. We need to fix men so you women don't have to go through that stupid shit. And if you don't have to go through that stupid shit, you might actually want to have a child. Maybe there's groundbreaking. Maybe you want to have two. Maybe we want to hit replacement rate where we're under 1.62 right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need over two, right, to keep it going. So yeah, if we change the discussion, and so that kind of puts me towards the abortion debate because I think we need to change the discussion there too. I just alluded to it. Why children of the man are gone is because they don't survive from resources, but the other part of it is infanticide in nature. Because if I'm a dude and I make a woman pregnant and she has the child and then I leave and the child is very small, in nature she kills the child because that child affects her mate value. And it is better to find a new man and have 3 or 4 children than it is to keep that one child. And you see this in culture still now to date. There is still infanticide being taken to the state. So the answer to abortion is infanticide when we don't keep men in the picture. That's just natural. So the fact that a woman will be naturally inclined to be pro-choice is actually a throwback to the fact that she would have killed her children had the men left. That's something I think a lot of the pro-life people don't understand. There is a natural component to this because survival is survival of the better good versus survival of everybody. And I think that's something that needs to be brought forward and why this thing kind of needs to be at least an option. But here's where I reframe it. These numbers. Let me make sure I have the right one up. This needs to be the reframing of the discussion. 930,000 abortions in 2020. And with 4 states not reporting, we're still, I would imagine those 4 states are probably where the bulk of it is at because we're at 2/3 of it
Mm-hmm.
with 46 states. So this is where the discussion needs to come around and say, okay, I'm a conservative. I believe every life matters and it starts with inception. You are not a conservative and you believe that a female should have a choice to protect her future mate value, which is what she's doing. If you say it correctly, she is protecting her future mate value, not uh, skirting on a responsibility. This is something that's under the surface, and she can't tell you that unless she's as well versed in evolutionary biology as someone who knows these things. But she has that feeling. So you're having two different discussions talking past each other. If I was a conservative and I wanted to reframe this argument a little bit, as I would say, okay, we did the Roe v. Wade thing. It's up to the states. There's a lot of debate out there. There's states that want to do this, states that want to do that. Let's shelf this for now because if you're going to bring me your direction where there is a choice in this matter up to a certain point, what I want you to address to alleviate my suffering in this argument as a conservative is that number. This is twice the leading cause of death of any other major. This is twice cardiovascular death. You alleviate my concerns by going back to the old safe and rare thing. That's where I would try to frame the discussion. You as a liberal or as a progressive, you alleviate this number by telling me your plan for reducing that, and maybe I'll come to the table with, okay, up to a certain point. And with these exceptions, rape, incest, blah, 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 blah. And I think that would be a more productive argument.
And there was a beginning of this a few years ago. I don't remember, I'd heard this number before, but it actually came up and started to become mainstream. Um, I feel like somebody brought this up in the 2015 primary or in the 2016 election that there were for years there were more babies aborted in New York City than born.
Hmm.
To your point about the numbers there. And whatever you think about abortion, that's got to make you go, oh, much like I brought up the story about how Iceland was bragging that they had pretty much eliminated Down syndrome because you're aborting them. Um, we had a regime that did that in the 30s, and we said they were bad. So maybe you shouldn't be bragging about that. Again, no matter what you feel, where you land on the spectrum, unless you're way over and you're not, not pro-choice, but full on pro-abortion, okay, well then these are the people that you're associating with. Okay, you know, I'll try not to go take us off on a tangent into the eugenics movement,
Yeah.
but
No, no,
that's
no.
who
Yeah.
you're
Like I
associating
said,
with.
I want to set a stage for a broader argument
Exactly.
because when you talk about the uh, pro abortion, I'm not going to say pro choice because let's call a spade, right? The pro abortion argument, there is a slight self defense argument for it because we lead the Western world in maternity deaths. Pregnancy is not risk free. And if you're raped or forced upon to have a child, you're not out of the woods when it comes to that kind of thing. And there's a lot of reasons why the US probably leads the list in that. And it might have to do, I saw a thing that was probably
That
obesity rates and the
well,
fact that
the
women are having children later, those things are really playing into it. But it's not a risk-free endeavor. So if you are forcefully made pregnant, again, something like rape or incest or something along those lines, there is a little bit of a self-defense component, even if there's nothing like glaringly wrong in the early stages.
there
But
there's merit to what you're saying as far as reframing the argument, especially now, because as I said when we first brought this up way back early on, of hey, let's have a fight and show our differences, and we had an abortion episode really early on when we started doing this. And my point was, the first question that must be asked and answered in the debate that isn't politically being asked and answered, but intellectually and morally, is what is a human life and when does it start? Now,
and yours was pretty much Inception, and mine was brain development.
mhm.
That was our big disagreement in that.
And
To
the
summarize that whole
and
episode.
then later I came back and I said, I think you're onto something here, because once we get past that point and can have, you know, agreement or at least understanding there, well, then you can see where someone would hold a different stance. And the analogy I made, because I first went, I don't know about that. But then later I thought about it. And I thought, there is something to the brain development, brain activity, because we allow different states to make different judgments on that when it comes to pulling the plug, basically,
Mhm.
right? Different states have different rules and laws regarding when and how that can happen. So, all right, different states could have different laws along the same lines. The other reason I feel that it's a your reframing makes more sense now. I don't know if you've seen this clip going around of Bill Maher, and I'm not
Oh,
sure he was joking.
yeah, where he says something
We
about
of
there's too
course
many
it's a
humans in
human
EMF.
life, but I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
There are too many people
That was
anyway.
one of the ones I really wanted to
Uh,
poop on him.
yeah, and this is where the real pro life movement, and I think I did I say this when I was ranting the other day about the GOP, that I hate to break it to you, grandma who's posting these, Jesus and the GOP, God's own party was one of the things the conservative right movement used to say about the GOP. Yeah, the GOP as a party is not and has never been pro life. Yes, technically it's in their platform. They haven't done a damn thing about it because they
Hmm.
don't want to, because at an establishment level, they're not pro life. So the reason we finally got Roe v. Wade struck down is because we had enough states that pressed the issue. That rather than tinkering around the edges, the point of their bills, the point of the heartbeat bills was, is this a separate life or not? You must answer this question, Supreme Court. We are answering it through the legislative process to force you to answer it, because you've been dodging the issue ever since Roe v. Wade. Even during Roe v. Wade, you're dodging the issue. The issue is, what is a human life and when does it begin? All right, we have that answer now. Now we have forced the people like Bill Maher to stop hiding behind platitudes and sophistry and euphemisms. No, no. What is a human life and when does it begin? I don't care. There are too many people anyway. Just kill the damn thing. Okay. I'm not talking with you because you're a lunatic and we can't have a rational argument. But if we can, but for those of us who can have a rational discussion about this, let's frame it this way and let us start moving the discussion in this direction now.
Hmm. Well, and that's that. I think it answers because it answers the slippery slope thing to some degree,
Mm.
even indirectly, because I think a lot of pro-life people are afraid of the third trimester people, right? Or the even as it's coming out the womb people, or the like Maryland, 18 months, no questions
The
asked if your baby dies.
the
That,
frickin' Virginia governor saying, who was a doctor, saying, well, if it survives the procedure, we make it comfortable while we talk to the mother and make a decision on what we're going to do. In other words, yeah, we'll just kill it if that's what the mom wants.
which
Uh,
pool has been like annoying me a little bit lately, but one of the things they did not that long ago was they had a debate and they had an extreme pro abortion person and an extreme pro life person, and they interjected and they said, and he said, you know what? I think you should be allowed to end the pregnancy up until the time of birth. And he used those words on purpose. End the pregnancy doesn't mean kill the child. So if it's third trimester and viable, you can induce labor and the child still has a chance. So he used those words on purpose that, okay, the mother ended the pregnancy, but the child's still alive. You didn't have to kill the child
mm,
to do so. And so I thought that was an amazing argument. Yeah, in the pregnancy, okay, up until this point where it's not viable, that's abortion. But it's viable, the kid still has a chance.
mm,
Just like this little kitty that I wanted that was, dying on the side of the road, give it a chance.
mm-hmm.
Give it a chance. It might not be, Garfield or Heathcliff or whatever by the end of it, but it had a chance and it might have a good life. We don't know. Give it a shot. You talk about
So,
eugenics. I wouldn't be here if we had eugenics back in
mm,
1980.
mm-hmm.
They would have said, oh, heart condition, oh, survival rate almost nil. Yeah, no, let's not have that one.
Well, and in America, and the laws were on the books, I think, until the 50s. But the eugenics movement was disturbingly big in America. And in fact, you can find there are letters from not from Hitler himself, but from the party to Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, thanking them for their efforts and what it has taught the world. Okay. So, like, I mean, you've talked about it before, but your dad, you know, oh, you're an alcoholic who's in and out of arrest all the time. Yeah, according to laws that were on the books in many states for like 50 years, we can forcefully sterilize you
Hmm.
so that you do not burden society with your progeny because your progeny is going to be like you and you are a drain on society.
Yeah, we still don't know how many there are.
Yeah. Well, from about 1900 to 1950 in a lot of states, that wouldn't have been a
Yeah.
problem. Here's the issue though with your reframing is it is useful culturally. I it it's interesting that you brought this up because just I think it was Monday, Steve Deace went off on a long rant on this about the politics of it and brought the receipts and brought the numbers. But this is why I say the GOP isn't pro-life and never has been, because the GOP establishment has been trying to get the pro-life part of the party to be quiet forever. And one of the reasons they say is because we can't win elections. Well, the numbers actually show that's not true. And it's not hard to figure out
Well,
why. That's
except
why
for
I brought up marital
2022.
status. Uh-uh,
2022, it killed them.
uh-uh,
No?
no. He brought up, Dace used the numbers. 2022, the reason the GOP lost or didn't do as well as was expected is because for the third straight year or third straight election, the GOP lost independence. There are more registered Democrats than there are registered Republicans. The Republicans have to win independence. Now, independence is a very broad swath. When you narrow it down, yeah, they got destroyed by single women. They always do.
Hmm.
The loss, the ratio of single women wasn't outside of historical norms. It was about the same as it always is. You're already going to lose single women. If you then abandon the pro-life issue, no, since Roe v. Wade, this was an interesting statistic. So he pointed out that the last time a a Republican won Catholics since those kinds of statistics were kept were President Garfield until Roe v. Wade. And if you know anything about Catholic social teaching, you know that they were a major part of the progressive movement, the Catholic Church. And that's one of the big reasons they voted Democrat so heavily through the 1900s until Roe v. Wade, because the one place they're very conservative is the life issue. So no Republican has won the presidency and lost the Catholic vote. For a
Well,
Republican to win, they have to win the Catholic vote. And to win the Catholic vote, you have to be pro life.
yeah, and when I use the word pro-life, again, this is in my direction of reframing the
Mm,
discussion. Is what's the point of being pro-life? To save lives, right? If you can get the other side that is against you to say, oh, no, we can cut that number in half if we do this, you just save 500,000 lives. That's the key.
mhm.
If you say, no, we're against you, and the other side says, no, we're against you, we're right where we are.
Well,
And we
that's why I
stay
the
there.
reframing is useful when it comes to first culturally is culturally changing minds, and then when it comes to okay, but now what specific policies? How do we want to enact a policy in the post Roe v. Wade world? Whether that is a federal standard, whether that is just on a state by state basis, whatever. All right, now let's have this policy discussion, and we need to frame it this way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll bring in a third piece of evidence here. This is breakdown of abortions by income level. What would you say? And this we'll have to speculate here based on this chart. That 41.8% of abortions that are under the poverty level are single mothers or single to be mothers
Mm-hmm.
that decide to end it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the incentivizing males. I think we could, if we take a nuanced, multi uh, variable approach to this problem, not only can we cut it in half, we could probably cut it by 2/3 or 3/4. Because, well, maybe not that much. Let me look at the graph again. The greater than 200% of poverty level people are probably going to stay that way because those are your oopsies, and I don't want my family to know kind of abortions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't want it to get out. I don't want it to get into the neighborhood or whatever. Those are going to be there because those are the people that vote against abortion but still have them. You know, that's that crowd. But the poor people, if we can incentivize males under the poverty line in a two-parent household becomes over the poverty line. Because if you're going to convince the man to stick around for their children, you're probably going to convince them to get a hardworking job.
The Brookings Institute, which is a left leaning think tank,
But
said
they do a lot
decades
of good
ago,
work
yeah,
on the male struggle. Yeah.
pointed out decades ago that there are only three things you need to do in America to not live in poverty: graduate high school, get married, don't have kids when you're single,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not in poverty. That's that simple. Not easy, but it is that simple.
This is actually one area that I struggle on with my anti-authoritarian bend because I actually think there might be merit to a governmental uh what would be the word? Incentive. Incentive would be a very nice word, but of forcing men to be within a certain distance of their children.
Mm,
And so similar to what child support is, right? Except there's also a local component. You
mm.
actually have to spend this much time with your children. Exceptions for abuse and stuff, obviously, but you have to be this percentage of your child's life. And that's not just pushing the male, because I'm going now. I've been hard on the men, but women separate their children from their fathers too.
And they
You
use that as a weapon.
and they use that as a weapon. Yes. So you have to force the father to be part of their child's life in some situations, but you also have to force the mother to not get in the way.
Hmm.
And
Well,
that's where I do struggle, because I am very anti-authoritarian on almost everything in life, but I also am very pro parent.
I will assuage your anti-authoritarianism by pointing out that before we even consider something like that, let alone what that policy would look like, first we should dig into the federal registrar or the state registrar and regulations and laws, because the odds are there's something we could repeal that is inhibiting that in the first place. There's probably some government program or
Well, and
set of laws or something
that's part of my
that is,
reframing the discussion on welfare
yes,
is we keep
yes.
blaming the woman. We need to start putting the fire under men.
Um, so one of the I was looking to find the title of the book. I've had this
Well, maybe
podcast
not an
downloaded for a while
authoritarian
here.
approach, but an incentive approach for men to stick around.
There's a guy named Tim Carney. I don't know who he writes for now.
I've heard the
Um,
name.
yeah, he's I think he's written for National Review and other, right-leaning stuff. He's got a new book. I say new. This podcast is from March, and I haven't had time to listen to it yet, from Charles C.W. Cook's um podcast. Anyway, the reason I have it downloaded is because he spends like an hour talking to Tim Carney about this book, which is called Family Unfriendly. The
He
subtitle
writes for the
being
Examiner.
Okay. The subtitle being How Our Culture Made Raising Kids Much Harder Than It Needs to Be. So the odds are, before we even consider what kind of a policy we would use to incentivize or force this to happen, is what are we doing that's making it hard? What are we doing that's disincentivizing that in the first place?
Well,
And
okay,
then can
so
we
so
repeal that?
so back to my first point, we are making sure the kids are taken care of without father. So that's again, that's not just on the female, that's on the male, because he's got no incentive to have
Hmm.
to do anything. The other part is we are to your point from Me Too, the always defaulting to the woman is right on what the father is to the child, as well as their own relationship with the child. So we need to give men more right to try to have custody, or actually, we need to make it a responsibility to actually have a mediated custody battle every time there's a child involved where the parents aren't together,
Mm.
where there is a person that says, this is your financial situation, this is your housing situation, this is history of abuse, this is all those things to the other side. Say this is the best place for the child,
Yes. And
whether
it,
it's the
it
man or the woman,
and it
because we
needs to
default
be
to
neutral.
child needs mom.
Hmm.
Child needs mom for 9 months. After that, it's equal. And in fact, it shifts to the other side in certain situations.
Hmm.
So we need somebody to say, okay, these are the situations here. This is the best place for child, and the parents actually have no choice in that. You want to be not the best place for the child, you make your life shit. That's
Yeah.
your choice, you know.
You make your case, but this neutral arbiter is
Mhm.
going to decide on what is best for the child.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
supplied half of the gametes here. You made this being.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
are responsible for it. Then on the flip side of that is you didn't get that. Guess what? Here's your 50% and here's how you contribute. You need to be within so many miles. You need to have this much time with the child. You need to supply this much money to the child. You need this. You need your family to be involved. Extended family, not just you. You need, if other siblings come into it, you need to integrate that child with that situation. If you take on another partner, either side, you need to do the things you need to do to make sure that is not redheaded stepchild. All of these things need to be mediated by, this is what social work should be for.
Hmm.
Instead, we get pink hair and stupid DEI statements. This is what people with the degree I'm going for should actually be for.
Were you ever on food stamps or anything like that while
No,
you all were struggling through college?
nope.
We were for a little bit, and it
We
was,
tried when Ben was young. We did
mhm,
WIC. We did do
yeah.
WIC. Yeah. But we tried, and I was working so hard and she was in school so hard we couldn't make any of the meetings.
Hmm.
That was the mind fuck of it all. It was like we needed it. That's why we're working this hard, but we can't get it because we're working this hard.
That was one of my sacrifices that I had to make, was dealing with that, because she really didn't want to, super introverted, but also after I got hurt, she was the one who was working. And so she didn't have the time. It was infuriating because 4 out of 5 people in that office, they will treat you like crap if you are the dad, if you are the father, if you are the man. She goes in there and it's, oh, okay, honey, here's what you need to do. Oh, you didn't do this. Here, let me help you do this real quick. And if I go in there, it's, you did this wrong. Come back with it right. How, what specifics, please? I don't, it looks right to me. I did all
Mhm.
the next. You know, they were just complete a-holes to me most of the time.
Mhm.
I would say 4 out of the 5 people I interacted with were jerks. She never had a problem if she went in there.
Just the
Wonder of
way it is.
wonders. Yeah.
Yeah, part of
And
my
that's 20 years ago.
yeah, part of my reframing is we got to just relook at all of these systems
Hmm.
and the education that comes from these systems. Like I said, what people who are going through what I'm going through now at the master's level, they typically become social workers if they go clinical. The problem is they're not doing any of that. They're not getting that degree of understanding. They're just getting, here's the forms you fill out, here's the
Hmm.
process you go through,
Hmm.
here's the thing you do. And they really have very little understanding of what it means to be in that situation. And if they do, they probably were somebody who grew up on the negative end of it, so they already have a bias.
Hmm.
That's one thing I bring to the table is I've been on the negative end, but I have a dissociation with myself enough to say, okay, let me look at the situation outside of what just I experienced. And that's a hard thing for people. I think that's where whole nother
Yeah.
I won't go down there. A whole nother discussion where things like meditation and stuff can come in because you do get the skill of being not self,
Hmm.
of looking at things over the top, like you hear with near death experience, right? Looking at things from a different angle.
Well,
So,
that's why my mind has totally been changed on psychedelics and
mhm.
their potential uses, their potential benefits, or at least, under the right circumstances, not as harmful as I had thought. I thought, oh, it's just hippie hooey. And then I experienced, and I was like, oh, okay, I know what that disassociative feeling, yeah, I know what that is now. And there's something to that. There's something going on here that I can't quite explain.
Yeah, we're going to Mexico next month, uh, 4th of July week. And the area we're going to, Guanajuato, is the San Miguel, which is right next to it, is known for their psilocybin places. I'm I'm like 90% like I'm gonna take a wad of cash and just
Hmm.
see what it's like, just to go through one of them with a guide and just to say I did it, but also to experience it. Uh, I think it might be beneficial just from an experience standpoint, even if it doesn't address any particular need. Uh, but yeah, I'm about 90%. There's that 10% part of me that is scared. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but at the same
It
time,
it, it can be kind of freaky because it's a very different feeling than it.
well,
I
and
mean,
I'm
it
assuming the psilocybin trip will be more intense than
more
what you're going
intense. I
through
I
in the
would assume
clinic.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's like growing up and vacationing, going to visit family in Oklahoma. I had seen a half dozen tornadoes. I had been close enough to see about a half dozen tornadoes. And then we moved to Joplin, and I never even saw it because it was rain wrapped. But that was the first time I was close enough to hear one.
Mm.
And you're told it sounds like a freight train. No, that's just the closest thing in the world. It is so eerie. It is such a strange sound. It really is indescribable. It's like an oncoming freight train.
What it remember when remember George from the dorm, the kind of our neighbor ish,
Hmm.
and that first time when that big tornado went through Moore, Oklahoma, he was downstairs. He's like, let's go storm chasing. And me from Texas was like, you know what you're
Okay.
doing. Yeah. And jumped in the car and we went and we were close enough to him uh when we were sitting under that underpass. Freight train, yes. But when you think of freight train, you think of blowing of the whistle, right? You
Hmm.
think of blowing of the sound.
It's the
It was a
roar.
sucking.
Hmm.
It was like talking out versus talking in as you're breathing in. It's talking in as you're breathing in. It's a different sound, but it's the same airway. You know,
Hmm.
it was like you said, it was very eerie. But
Well, we've been rambling for a while, and I think your magic mushrooms are a good place to leave it because one of the things I had wanted to talk about, but I kind of talked about Friday, was this idea of meditation and mindset and my experiences with it, which is it's just as well because I've been tinkering around with it and self experimenting a little bit. And so we can talk a little bit more about mindset and meditation
yeah, and I'm almost
and
done
that
with
kind of thing.
uh the Buddhist book that I had been putting is Buddhism True, the
Hmm.
Robert Wright. So been having time to read lately, so I'm almost done with that book, and I've got one up on the shelf, my new one on consciousness. Peterson said it was the best book on consciousness that he'd ever read. So I went ahead and bought it to see if it's the best book on consciousness ever written that I've read. So it's an interesting thing. But yeah, let's go ahead and set some groundwork. And then if I do the trip during the trip,
Hmm.
then we'll probably have a lot to talk about on that. So we'll kind of get a pre and then a post on that. So yeah, anything you want to cap on the end of this? We did talk some fitness, so I'll give the disclaimers. We're not your trainers. We don't know you personally. I gave some advice on some things you could do around belly
Hmm.
fat, but it's not necessarily your situation. It just works for most people.
Yeah, yeah. If that doesn't work for you, try and use the process that we went through, the steps, the ideas to try and figure out what to apply to yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Other than that, we just spoke out of our ass. So some of us
You a
more
lot
painfully
because
than others. Yeah.
you have two holes now, so double the ass talk.
You know, one of them is healing so good. It's gonna be a bad scar, but it is doing super well. And so we're hopeful. You notice I sat most of the time here, but
You're fidgeting a heck of a lot less than you did on Saturday.
yeah, yeah. Well, Saturday was 3 days out. That was intense pain.
Yeah.
But
All right. Well, we will see y'all Friday or Saturday, whatever the time allows.
I'm good.
Hopefully
I'm good
Friday.
Friday. Yeah.
So for more Wheel of Time, speaking of consciousness, we're back on to Rand, so may get a little bit of that Friday.
All right. Later, guys. Oops.